If you're new here, hit that subscribe button, because tonight's story isn't a ghost tale or a horror movie. It's something far darker. A real Halloween nightmare that began with candy and ended in death. It was Halloween night, 1974, in Deer Park, Texas. Kids in costumes ran from door to door, laughing, shouting, "Trick or treat!" while parents followed behind, smiling under streetlights. But among them was one father, Ronald O'Bryan, who would change Halloween forever. At 9 p.m., the rain started to fall. Streets cleared, porch lights dimmed. Ronald and his two children, Timothy and Elizabeth, had one last stop to make, a house on a quiet corner with no lights on. No one answered the door, but then Ronald returned from the dark porch holding 5 giant pixie sticks candies. "Look what I found," he said with a grin. Hours later, back home, little Timothy begged for one more piece of candy before bed. He reached for the pixie sticks. Ronald helped open it. Minutes later, Timothy began vomiting, shaking, and screaming. His father tried to hold him, then the boy went still. By midnight, police were at the O'Bryan home, red and blue lights flashing against Halloween decorations. The candy was tested, and what they found made every parent in America stop breathing. The powder inside wasn't sugar. It was cyanide. Enough to kill several people instantly. News spread like wildfire. Parents rushed to hospitals with their kids' candy bags. Neighborhoods locked down. The question was, who could have done something so evil? Who would poison children on Halloween night? Detectives quickly ruled out strangers. The poisoned candies all came from the same handful Ronald had been carrying. But as the investigation deepened, their focus slowly turned to him, the grieving father. When police discovered his debts, life insurance policies, and a chilling paper trail, the story took a turn no one could have imagined. The man America feared was hiding inside his own home. And when investigators opened Ronald's desk drawer, they found something that froze them in place. When detectives opened Ronald O'Bryan's desk drawer, they found something no grieving father should ever have: pamphlets on chemical poisons, detailed notes on dosage, and a list of local suppliers. The room went silent. The same man who had cried on television, begging to find his son's killer, was now their prime suspect. Investigators retraced Ronald's steps from the days before Halloween. At a local chemical supply store, the clerk remembered a man asking suspicious questions about cyanide, how much it would take to harm a small animal, and whether it had a taste or smell. The man never gave his name, but his description fit Ronald perfectly. Meanwhile, interviews with family and coworkers painted a disturbing picture. Ronald was drowning in debt, over $100,000 behind on payments, and facing job loss. But just a few weeks before Halloween, he had taken out life insurance policies on both his children, policies that would pay out handsomely if anything happened to them. The pieces began to click. Police learned that only 5 pixie sticks had been handed out that night. One killed Timothy. 2 others were recovered before they were eaten. 2 more were found in the hands of other children, neighbors who had been seconds away from tasting death. By morning, Ronald was taken in for questioning. He swore he was innocent, that someone else must have slipped him the poisoned candy. "I'm a victim too," he said. But investigators noticed something. Not once did he ask what had really happened to Timothy. The interrogation grew tense. Ronald's story kept changing. Different houses, different times, different people. Finally, detectives confronted him with the evidence: the insurance policies, the chemical notes, and the eyewitness accounts. He looked down. Silent. Then he whispered, "You can't prove it." But when police searched his home again, they found a pair of scissors with candy residue matching the cut pixie sticks wrappers. The evidence was overwhelming. The father who had walked through the rain holding his children's hands had turned Halloween into horror, for greed. When officers led Ronald O'Bryan out of his home in handcuffs, neighbors stood frozen on their lawns, unable to believe the man who gave candy to their kids had murdered his own. But the story didn't end there. In the courtroom, as his trial began, something even darker came to light, a shocking detail that would forever earn him the name, the Candy Man. The courtroom was packed. Reporters, parents, and curious onlookers filled every seat. The man they once called a loving father now sat stone-faced behind the defense table, his orange prison jumpsuit glowing under the fluorescent lights. Ronald O'Bryan barely blinked as prosecutors described how he'd used candy, a symbol of childhood joy, to carry out one of the most chilling crimes in American history. The words hung in the air like poison. He killed his own son for money. The jury listened as witnesses recounted Ronald's obsession with cyanide. A chemical supplier testified that he tried to purchase it weeks before Halloween but left when told he needed a business license. Co-workers said he bragged about how easy it was to kill someone, if you're smart enough. But the most haunting moment came when a lab technician took the stand. He held up a single Pixie Sticks tube inside a clear evidence bag, bright, colorful, and deadly. The room fell silent. Inside that innocent paper straw was enough cyanide to kill 4 grown men. Ronald's defense team tried to paint him as a grieving father, framed by circumstance. But the insurance documents, signed just days before his son's death, spoke louder than any plea. He had taken out policies worth tens of thousands of dollars on both his children, and made himself the sole beneficiary. After weeks of testimony, the jury deliberated for only 46 minutes. When they returned, the foreman's voice was steady. Guilty on all counts. Ronald O'Bryan, the man who had once handed out candy to neighborhood kids, was sentenced to death. The media gave him a name that would echo in Halloween lore for decades, the Candyman. As he was escorted out, Ronald turned to the cameras and said coldly, "I didn't do it." But few believed him. Years passed on death row. Appeals came and went. And in 1984, nearly a decade after the crime, his sentence was carried out by lethal injection. None of his family attended. Outside the prison gates, as the sun dipped below the horizon, parents clutched their children tighter that Halloween night. Across America, trick-or-treat candy was inspected, sometimes thrown away entirely. A tradition had been forever tainted by one man's greed. But there was something else, something investigators never solved. The original cyanide used in the Pixie Sticks was never found. No record of a purchase. No leftover supply. Some believed Ronald had an accomplice who never came forward. Others thought he destroyed every trace himself. Either way, the fear he created still lingers every Halloween, in every home, in every cautious parent checking candy under bright kitchen lights. And that's the chilling truth of the Candyman, the father who turned Halloween into horror. After Ronald O'Bryan's execution, Halloween in America was never the same. What was once a night of laughter, glowing pumpkins, and sugar highs became shadowed by quiet suspicion. Parents began inspecting every candy bar, tearing open wrappers under bright kitchen lights, terrified of what they might find. News networks replayed the story year after year, the father who poisoned his own son for money. Soon, whispers grew into warnings. Tales spread through neighborhoods, razors hidden in apples, needles in chocolate bars, poisoned lollipops from strangers. Almost none of those stories were real. But O'Bryan's crime had done something more powerful than poison. It planted fear. Real, lasting fear. Police departments across the country started issuing Halloween safety bulletins. Communities launched trunk or treat events in church parking lots, where candy was handed out under adult supervision. Candy manufacturers began sealing every wrapper with new tamper-proof packaging. The entire holiday, once wild and carefree, had changed forever. But even decades later, one question still haunts investigators who studied the case. How did Ronald get the cyanide? No local stores reported selling any. No shipments were traced. And when detectives reopened the case files in the early 2000s, one small note caught their attention, a scribbled message from an anonymous tipster in 1975. He didn't do it alone. The handwriting was never identified. The caller who left the message was never found. Could there have been someone else? A second person with access to chemicals, or maybe another motive altogether? We'll probably never know. But one thing is certain, that Halloween night, a crime of greed became an eternal warning. Every year, parents across America still check their children's candy, even though it's been decades since any confirmed case like O'Brien's. The story became folklore, retold in classrooms, parroted in movies, and whispered by flashlights at sleepovers. But behind the legend is a real child, Timothy O'Bryan, whose life ended before it ever truly began. His death changed how millions celebrate Halloween. It turned a night of masks and costumes into something darker, a reminder that sometimes, real monsters don't wear masks at all. So next time you unwrap a piece of candy on Halloween night, take a second look. Because once, long ago, one piece of candy turned a father into a killer, and a holiday into a haunting. If you thought this story was chilling, the next one will freeze your blood. Subscribe and watch out for more.